Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are going to get started on this next panel that we have in store for you, restaking in the modular endgame. On our panel today, I'd like to welcome Sean O'Connor. Sean is Chief of Staff at BlockNative, where he is working to improve the observability of public blockchain networks. Next to Sean, we have Thalita Franklin, who is a network lead and part of the research team at Chorus One with a BS in computer science and MBA in capital markets and derivatives. Next, I'd like to introduce Stanley He. Stanley is the co-founder of Linear Protocol, the biggest liquid staking protocol on Near. Finally, we will also have Tina Haibody joining us, probably just maybe running in on stage while the panel has already begun. She leads strategy and product over at EigenLayer, and in the past she was leading product at Fuel Network. Enjoy.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having us. We're really excited to dig in today. Want to start off today and ask our panelists to first, can you just define what the modular endgame means in the context of restaking?
Sure. What the modular endgame is in the context of restaking. Can you start?
Yeah, sure. I mean, like, modularity generally means you separate different parts in blockchain and making them like individual components, and which can be like combined freely. Like basically, like in a blockchain system, you have settlement, you have execution, you have data availability. And in the beginning, those three are like all bonded together within a single blockchain. Like Ethereum, like in the previously on Ethereum, you settle on Ethereum, and the execution client execute everything, and also all transactional data are posted on Ethereum. So that's what we call a monolithic blockchain. And today, most blockchains are still monolithic. But we are right now, I'll say, entering a modular stage where we are kind of separating those parts. We have chains like Celestia, who's specializing in data availability, and we have Ethereum, who's trying to become a settlement like hub, for everything. And also we have specialized like execution layers, like layer twos, who's only like executing transactions but posting data on DA layers and settling on Ethereum or other chains. So like with restaking, I'll say everything will be like more unified on the restaking. So it feels like we are like breaking chains up with modularity, but we are like kind of combining them together again with restaking, because restaking basically allows you to reuse security provided by the chain. So with so like in the context of modularity, like today you can basically use Ethereum to secure a DA layer that's not Ethereum with restaking, and you can use Ethereum again to like secure another layer that's not Ethereum but in the modular system. So yeah, I think that's my definition. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd say that to complement with that is that on the end game of modularity would be where the incentives are aligned for all the players in the chain, let's say. So for example, for node operators who has the overhead on the operational side, and for stakers who are engaging with more complexity and that can bring more risk to their strategies. So the economic part, and also the interoperability, because the modularity requires you tend to have much more fragmentation of liquidity. So it would be ideal that not only restaking is implemented, but also a way in which you can move this liquidity across all these applications running on top of the same ecosystem.
Yeah, I mean, the Ethereum roadmap is so focused on modularity going forward, and I see restaking is going to only exponentially increase our ability to get there, because you don't have to bootstrap liquidity for your protocol from day one. You can outsource a lot of that economic security to the second largest base layer out there after Bitcoin. As we're looking to get into it, I really want to dig into your perspective as a validator. What are some of the challenges that you foresee for the validator ecosystem as we look to adopt restaking?
I think for what we have seen is that the node operators are getting adapt to the increase in operational work and also responsibilities in general, because you have we need to implement form of governance that you can represent your users, the people staking with you. For example, when you choose which AVSs you're gonna onboard, and it requires a lot of research to make sure that you are not engaging with projects that will only increase the risk and not really reflect on good APIs, for example, for your users. So you can also have regulatory concerns in which you can do that without being classified as an asset manager, for example. So we have seen a lot of these discussions, but it's a living thing, and most of them don't really have a clear answer right now.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of regulatory ambiguity, and I think we're going to have to pathfind our way through this. Stanley, anything you want to add there?
No, I think that's pretty comprehensive. Like as a liquid staking provider, like we work very closely with with node operators and like staking, I would say solutions. And for us, it's like restaking actually changed the whole staking business. Either staking or liquid staking. Yeah, because previously everyone's just securing a single chain and just collecting that base APY. Just very little room, at least on the yield side, for different solutions to actually differentiate. But right now, with restaking, I think we're actually transforming the staking service into a, like at least from the LST side, it's like a liquid wrapper of a general purpose security provider. Like, a node operator can operate so many things, but still under the umbrella of, let's say, Ethereum. So I think that's, what makes things so much more fun, but also so much more complex. Yeah.
Yeah, Stanley, I want to double click on something you said there. As a liquid staking provider, what are the implications or the differences between native restaking and liquid restaking, and how are you thinking about that?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think like probably Tina will have a better answer.
Yeah.
But from what I know, so like native restaking is the most, I would say, canonical way of restaking. So like basically a Ethereum node opt-in, as a and basically restake that 32 ETH in a node to EigenLayer. So I think and that kind of like binds the security of that node to whatever restaking service the node is providing. So I think like that, and I think that's also why people were discussing whether restaking will overload consensus, because there can be like a cascade slashing. If a node gets slashed in an AVS, probably it's also gonna get slashed on Ethereum, which will make Ethereum network less stable. And I think that for AVS, for applications who want to achieve ultimate decentralization, they will want to choose native restaking. They probably will only allow native restakers to secure their network. And with like liquid restaking or like restaking with LST, let's say SEs or REs, you deposit them on EigenLayer directly. That's like kind of I don't know, like there isn't much thing can be done on the LST side. So like it's purely user activity. I think they obviously it feels more centralized, and it's not that closely binded with Ethereum based security. So that actually could be a kind of in some way a better solution for many applications who don't want to mess up Ethereum. Yeah, and from our perspective, we actually want to support both. So like right now we are bringing out layer 1 assets to EigenLayer, basically allowing EigenLayer AVS to use not only Ethereum but BTC, Solana, Near, Atom for security. And we're gonna like allow for ultimate flexibility, which means you can do like vanilla like liquid restaking, just use our like the most fundamental LSTs, but also we will like offer risk tranched products, basically and to users who like prefer a higher like risk profile. So yeah.
Very cool. Anything you want to add to that?
Yes, I think if you think a little bit more on the technical side, that's where on the operational, on the node operator perspective, we are more concerned about, is that the native staking, it's something that is implemented on the protocol level. So the protocol recognizes what the staking, what exactly is going on there. And when you go to restaking and liquid restaking, you are adding complexity to the protocol layer, which is not really recognized by the protocol. And so you are actually engaging with an application that has a direct impact on the consensus layer and in the layer on protocol and security. So not only developers, but node operators and users need to keep that in mind. And I think this is also something that we'll be watching as it develops. I think it's not really obvious the real dynamic of applications impacting the protocol layer.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
yeah.
a bit abstract, but this is how I tend to think about the differences.
To steal an old phrase, there's no free lunch, and that extra yield is coming from increased risk. So where do you see this changing the governance landscape for both Ethereum and applications that decide to outsource their security to restaking protocols?
I'd say governance will play a very relevant role, as we have seen, for example, on the liquid staking part, that we have DAOs who tend to coordinate many things on which operators are part of the protocol, and a cap that we use, for example, for Interior that needs to be less than 30%, for example. I think we might tend to see similar things for restaking. What is the ideal cap for liquid staking in the protocol? Because restaking and the capital efficiency, let's say, perspective can be seen as leverage, and leverage is risk.
Yeah.
So I think governance will need to be reflected as well on, for example, as I mentioned before, how do you make sure that the applications are really reflecting the base layer users that are really staking with the node operators, because you have the node operators on the middle. So what is really how does this mechanism gonna work? There will be, you don't have really on-chain governance, for example, right now, as we have seen in Cosmos. Because Cosmos has now a liquid staking module, but this is implemented on the protocol layer, and the governance is also a chain. So it's easier to make sure that all the decisions are really reflecting the community.
Yeah. I mean, like there is no on-chain governance for Ethereum, but if you look at the reality, you have to you have to admit that the LDO token has some sort of governance power, at least on Ethereum, whatever that means, because there's no governance for Ethereum. I think like in the context of restaking, things will get more extreme, because with AVS, let's say in the future, if most of the new applications, new node networks are launched with restaking, like Ethereum layer 1 and Ethereum holders and restaking pipeline players will have a very, I would say, a very strong say on AVS. So I think that should be the part that where the governance mechanism should be focused on. Like we have to make sure that it's not about the AVS themselves, but also about like restaking providers like EigenLayer or like LRTs, LSTs. They have to like distribute their governance power more fairly to users, and like otherwise it's not only about their own protocol, but it's about like a whole world of AVS projects. And what we don't want to see is a governance monopoly like this one token actually governing like almost everything. I mean, I'm pretty sure like a lot of people want to build this because it sounds super profitable, but we actually don't really want to, we don't really want this dystopia to happen. So so I think that's where we are looking at now. We are trying to just to avoid this future, but also making sure that there's real value accrual to different layers of governance.
Yeah, and we've seen social consensus mechanisms already in play with like against Lido per se for reaching thresholds that, while not baked into the protocol, are deemed by the community to be worrisome and potentially problematic. I could see us reaching a state maybe this time next year where the community is starting to talk about what those thresholds are for different liquid staking providers and when we need to pump the brakes a little. Thalita, I was curious if are there other lessons from the Cosmos ecosystem or other liquid restaking protocols that you think Ethereum should learn from and take some best practices towards?
I'd say that restaking is also quite new in the Cosmos, although it's already implemented, as I mentioned. But the way that is implemented right now, it's called replicated security, so that there is a governance proposal in which users, the stakers, and node operators vote to be onboarded as a consumer chain. And then doing the parallel to Ethereum and restaking on Ethereum, consumer chain would be an AVS. And then once this governance passes, all the validators onboard that ICS. So that's why it's called replicated security. That would be very different from what we expect to be implemented in EigenLayer, because you can actually opt in for each AVS. So I'm not sure how that would be comparable, let's say. But I think, as I mentioned before, the governance, I think, would be one of the biggest lessons to be inspired from the Cosmos, I think.
Awesome. Hey, Tina, thanks for joining us. Sorry some of your time got slashed. Just pull the mic about 2 inches from your mouth. And I'm going to throw a question over to you to jump right in. Can you give us a little bit of a sense about data availability and how restaking is going to change that ecosystem?
Yeah, so for context, I work on product and strategy at EigenLayer, and I work both with the stakers and operators team and EigenDA. And I used to lead product at a Rollup, which was Fuel. And I think the ability to enhance Rollups is like the biggest aspect that EigenLayer has for the ecosystem. A lot of people just think of restaking and EigenDA as two siloed products. But the biggest issue that I saw working it directly at a rollup and trying to bootstrap a proof of authority launch that would transition eventually to a proof of staking launch was that finding liquidity for the initial launch and then finding a validator set is very frustrating. And a lot of these rollups actually end up choosing LPs that are either within their existing investment arms or their existing investor pool, or validator firms that are also in their existing investor pools. And this is a large centralization risk. So the caveat is that EigenLayer actually bootstraps those two biggest problems, the problem of liquidity and then the problem of getting a validator set. We have 5,000 operators, last I checked. I think it's 5,388 right now. And that is the highest amount of validators in the Ethereum ecosystem outside of Ethereum itself. So that is the best way to actually have a decentralized rollup with an existing validator set and liquidity that is with ETH itself.
Yeah, I think we're on the cusp of DAs really taking off, and this restaking will enable an increasing amount of L2s to potentially shift out to DA. How do you view the DA landscape as changing over the next 24 months as restaking coming online?
Would you like to start?
No, you go ahead. I want to know your viewpoints as stakers and staker firms as well.
Well, I anticipate a lot of different chains offering DA services. And I imagine that people will be, like applications will be trying all of them, and there might be a convergence to what is the really value added by the DA layer. That we already have this, the idea of the need for it, but how many do we need, and what is really the price that applications are keen to pay for it? Because since every time you increase the price, the cost in the whole chain for an application, you reflect on a smaller API for holders. And so this is a big challenge of increasing the level of layers and intermediaries to achieve the same goal, let's say. So I think this is what I'm most curious to see the result.
Yeah, I mean, like there's currently nothing stopping you from using Google Sheet SDA, right? So yeah, I mean, like, so, and that tells us, what we truly care about DA is, stability, security, decentralization. So, like right now, obviously, layer 2 is using, Ethereum core data. It's probably like the safest way, SDA, because, it's as safe as Ethereum itself. And then, after 4844, it's going to be block space, still, as safe as Ethereum itself. Like right now, we see layer 2s, some layer 2s moving to Celestia, like external DA layers, because, it's simply cheaper. And some other services, they're just moving to like off-chain, data availability, committee, if they don't really care about like, a decentralized DA that much. So I think with restaking, what we will allow is a more, I hate to use this word, but a more aligned DA layer. Like, right now, like Celestia is probably like the hottest, DA layer out there, and it has nothing to do with Ethereum. I mean, I think it's a good chain, but I think there could be a premium that people are willing to pay for a DA layer that's more closely connected to the settlement layer. Like, because like first, on a technical side, there's a bridging problem, right? So like validators and maybe smart contracts need to have access to that data on the DA layer when they need. And so there's this bridge problem. There's this bridging problem. And the second, I think it's purely from I don't know, from social consensus perspective. If you are using this chain as settlement, you probably also want to use a relevant sort of service for DA, and that's just my gut feeling. I mean, there's nothing, again, there's nothing stopping you from using other solutions, but I think restaking actually, gives people an opportunity, to use a cheaper DA, but that's still somehow connected to, to Ethereum. So I think that premium is something people are willing to pay. That's my guess. So.
Yeah, and I also think like alignment's kind of a meme, and is actually originally used by Scroll First. So hats off to their team. But I do think that because we work closely with the Ethereum Foundation, it is a benefit. There are a lot of other benefits that include like cost and speed, and because we're not live on mainnet yet, I don't think there's a direct comparison to alternative solutions like Celestia or Avail. I think the biggest benefit for users is actually that it's similar to a cloud service provider. So it's kind of like this package deal where we're doing a lot of integrations with Rollups as a service and different rollup frameworks like Optimism and Arbitrum, where we're offering kind of package services with them. And let's say like Arbitrum's antitrust, with Conduit's self-serve deployment service and Gelato's self-serve deployment service, because developers aren't going to be going on forums and trying to verify and validate which of these modular package systems or develop package systems all go together. And it's very frustrating as a developer to do that. But what they are going to do is based on, let's say, their use cases, like gaming, like DeFi, and based on the transaction volume or the trading volume that they're going to incur and the burn of ETH fees that they will foresee, they're going to select a package of services. And I think the case that you're seeing right now is like Optimism is known for a rollup framework for these different DA solutions for particularly like NFT use cases. And Arbitrum is known for DeFi protocols. And having cloud service provider packages like that actually makes the developer product experience a lot better. And the last thing I will note actually is that really, other than that, like user experience and developer experience, developers really only care about costs. They care about nothing but cost. I was talking to like multiple DeFi founders that were doing maybe 40 to 100 ETH in burn a month, and they were going to go bankrupt if there wasn't an alternative DA solution. So some of them are onboarded to Celestia because it's the only solution that's available. So it's not because they're doing trade-offs, but it's because they need what's available right now, because there's company will go bankrupt. And when there's a more competitive market, that's better for developers as a whole. So I think all solutions are great. It's just different use cases and different benefits.
Yeah. So you heard it here first. Next year will be Google Drive DA, and we'll move on from there as an ecosystem. It's like the costs of writing to the base layer are prohibitive for a lot of individual end users. And as like I want to dig into a little bit of the title of this talk, modularity as an endgame. Like, I question if that's actually the end game of Ethereum as a whole. I know we've talked a lot about it as an ecosystem, but modularity without interoperability between the different layers seems to be setting us up for a world of pain as an ecosystem. And I'm wondering, where does restaking fit into that, and how will restaking help to increase interoperability between the different modular parts of the ecosystem?
Should I start? Well, as I mentioned in the beginning, I think restaking might be the first step on Ethereum to adopt a more modular approach, but we definitely need to do better on the interoperability side. I know even like restaking will probably allow that with, for example, this idea that I've seen Shriran mentioning of like watchtowers and instant finality. So perhaps you can have like AVSs implementing layers of communication between all these applications, which I think is it's great. And yeah, definitely this would be, in my perspective, something that would be required for the end game. So I think restaking is just like the first step.
Yeah.
I can just add one more thing. I just thought about it. I think also part of the end game would be more MAV solutions on the AVSs, because now this is very relevant happening on the base layer. And if we might expect seeing most of the execution moving to the application layers instead of the layer one. And we have a very strong MEV model happening on Ethereum right now, but we should expect seeing this also be implemented on Rollups and other AVSs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Tina should probably onboard Suave as an AVS, right? I think like this monolithic versus modular debate has been going on for years. Like here, I do think modular is the future, because like blockchain is is a replicated ledger basically. So it's for trustless decentralized consensus, which means it's inherently less effective, less efficient than a centralized server. And there's no way there's no way to bypass that. So I think like the key, like the core value a chain can provide is security. It's consensus. And I think what Eigenlayer is doing is to to make the best use of consensus and security. So I think this centralized, more or less centralized execution and decentralized verification and validation, I think that's definitely the future. I think that looks like future to me. I mean, I think like obviously there can be, and I don't necessarily think like monolithic and modular, they are like they're like a one into sort of choice. So I think they probably gonna finally merge like a super powerful monolithic chain like with I don't know millions of TPS, and probably it still wanna borrow security from a more decentralized network. So I think probably they're gonna merge in the future, and and hopefully we'll see restaking playing a a vital role in that process.
Yeah, restaking as an enabler. Tina, any thoughts?
Yeah, so I actually think the interoperability issue, the most contentious solution right now is probably prover networks. And I think you started to mention it at the beginning when you referenced watchtower networks. And my favorite possibly is witness chain that works directly with us as an ABS. And as we have more ABSs that are doing actual proofs of different balances, of validations, and signing on EigenLayer's network, and restaking on EigenLayer as a whole, that might be a potential solution, but there are also trade-offs of using prover networks. And I think that's not being discussed yet. And I think it's because a lot of the co-founders and researchers that are working on prover networks or solver networks don't want to point out the security risks that are involved with a lot of people working on constricting different proof systems. And once there's a security risk or vulnerability in a proof system that's made in an attestation on one chain with another attestation, then we're going to see a lot of potential hacks or vulnerabilities come about. So this is definitely probably my favorite solution that researchers are discussing, and I love the potential of ABSs using it, but I also wanted to point out the risks. Another thing that I want to say is I think modular is just a narrative. And I think it's a great way to sell the product. And it's a very great way to make it feasible and accessible to developers and users to understand what Celestia is. But I don't believe that right now the developer experience that we're building is modular. From the way that developers currently deploy a DA layer, to the way that they deploy a rollup, to the way that they even set up a validator, there's nothing modular about it right now. It's very hard, the developer experience is poor, and modular is a narrative that we sell for having prepackaged systems and systems that they can customize this experience. And it's really great to onboard them and help them understand kind of what it means. But I think we need to think past that and then how we can improve cloud services and the developer experience as a whole.
Yeah, if we want to move the entire world on chain, we need to make it easy for developers, and we need to have high transaction throughput, which I'm excited about the potential for restaking to enable that and to help drive more shared security across the ecosystem. We're running towards the end of our time for this panel. Is there any final thoughts or closing thoughts from the panelists?
Yeah, based on the last discussion and Tina's comment, I think that perhaps the developer experience is a great example of something that we can try to borrow as well from the Cosmos. For what I have heard from the developers, from Cosmos developers, the experience is very fluid there, it seems. So yeah, perhaps there will be more for us to be inspired from the Cosmos, I would say.
Yeah. So I think the last thing I want to say is, although we are like reusing security with restaking, I think the future will still be like multi-chain. So I don't think like any one chain will monopolize security providing. And what we're trying to do right now is to actually connect those chains and to make the best use of the security that they provide. Not only Ethereum, but also BTC or NEAR or Solana. So I think that's like the end game in overhead, and yeah, it's a lovely discussion.
Yeah, I would say we're only live on Goerli testnet for our operators and ABSs right now. So if you're interested in joining our Rollup working group or becoming an ABS, definitely come up to me to chat or message us on Twitter. And stay tuned for our mainnet launch that is going to be very soon.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an exciting time for restaking applications. And thanks, everyone, for the time and great conversation. If anyone in the audience wants to catch up, the panelists will be around afterwards, and appreciate all the time. Thanks, ETH Denver.
Thank you.